He shouldn't really be here. Oh no, he's coming. But don't worry, I have a plan. Man, can't believe that worked. Those meddling kids make it look so easy. Speaking of which,
Scooby-Doo was introduced in 1969 as an attempt to make a cartoon show that did not rely on violence. And to this day, Scooby has become a cultural icon with movies, TV shows, comic books, as well as other miscellaneous merchandise. But when it has come to video games, it has mostly been hit or miss.
Today we are going to look at one of the more well-known Scooby-Doo games, Scooby-Doo Night of 100 Frights. Does it still hold up today? Well, let's find out.
As you start the game, you'll notice that the intro is a shot-for-shot remake of the intro of the original series. It's actually a pretty accurate recreation, despite a few minor differences, like some of the monsters being replaced with this character. More on him in a bit. The game truly begins with the Scooby Gang on their way to solve a mystery at
Mystic Manor.
Wait, the Scooby Gang are going to Hong Kong Disneyland? Awesome!
Of course, they're not talking about that Mystic Manor. Instead, they're going to the family home of Daphne's friend Holly in order to solve the mystery of her uncle's disappearance.
Hey, Holly. Hey, Daphne. I'm so glad you could make it.
Well, I can definitely see why those two would be friends. I mean, they both look the same, and they both have the same voice actor.
She explains that her uncle, Professor Alexander Graham, voiced by Tim Conway, was about to unveil a brand new invention when he suddenly disappeared. And no one was willing to search for him because...
Don't tell me! Because it's haunted, right?
Yeah, Shaggy. How'd you know?
Because it's always haunted!
And you can definitely tell that it's haunted because in the background, you can see the window shutters opening and closing by themselves. Anyway, like the TV show, Shaggy and Scooby have no interest snooping around a haunted house, so they decide to stay behind.
Rip, roast me! Is the way to be!
But right when the others leave, hunger sets in.
You know, Scoob, I could really go for a Ruby snack!
Luckily, our heroes spot a very suspicious box of Scooby snacks.
Scooby-Doo!
That suspicious box of Scooby snacks was a trap all along? What are the odds?
And due to this final act, Scooby-Doo is now all alone. Now the gameplay begins. We need to get inside the mansion so we can warn the gang about what just happened. However, the door is blocked by a device called the Snack Gate. The Snack Gate won't let you through unless you collect a certain number of Scooby snacks. Luckily, this place has a playground that's chock full of Scooby snacks. The playground is also a great place to test out the gameplay mechanics. Scooby can walk, run, jump, and charge. He can also hang on to certain objects and swing around on them. There are also certain terrain that can affect us, like tar pits that can keep us from running and jumping, or ice that can make us slip. So once we get enough Scooby snacks, we can finally enter the mansion, only to discover that the gang is nowhere to be found. However, we can hear Holly calling for help, seemingly trapped somewhere.
I need some help in here.
So we find the key to open the door that she's trapped behind, and oh my god, what has happened to your face? Yes, that definitely looks like the face of someone who has been kidnapped.
Thank you for saving me, Scooby. I was so scared. You can see it by the look on my face.
Okay, to be fair, I know that gaming graphics weren't really that advanced in 2002. But did you have to make her look like a creepy, emotionless doll?
Stuck behind this locked door ever since.
Yes, you definitely seem like someone who is in distress, especially with the lack of restraints and lack of enemies, and the fact that this is next to a room with a window you can easily jump out of. Anyway, she explains that as soon as they entered the house, the mastermind appeared, claiming that he was the one who kidnapped her uncle. And then several trap doors opened, causing the entire gang to disappear.
Here, take this map. It'll help you get around a little easier.
Oh, thank you for this map you gave me, without actually giving me anything.
Okay, was it really too much trouble to create a cutscene where she's tied to a chair and in a closet, and once you free her, she then gives you the map by physically handing it to you? I mean, it can't be that hard.
Now there are 3 areas to this game: Mystic Manor, Smuggler's Cove, and the Hedge Maze. Every area has a dark color palette, which makes it feel like an episode of the original series. I find it interesting that they try to translate the style of the 1960s TV show into a 2002 video game, and they pull it off pretty well. It has some great creepy music alongside its dark color tone, and it has some cartoony sound effects to go along with it. I especially love the sci-fi music whenever you ride on these tables. Right? The game even has a laugh track that goes off whenever he does a certain action. It's cute, but it can be distracting when he's doing something not that funny. There are also several kinds of enemies you can encounter. The small ones can be killed by jumping on them, Mario style. However, it won't be long until you encounter... As I was saying, it won't be long until you encounter monsters from the original series. For example, you'll encounter the zombie, the werewolf, the ghost, the witch doctor, the headless specter, Captain Cutler's ghost, Charlie the robot, the creeper, Space Kook, and, Mr. Animal?
Geronimo!
Wait, do you mean Geronimo, as in that Indian witch doctor from that dog napping episode?
Okay, I have one question for you. Would you expect the Indian witch doctor to act like this?
Geronimo! Take that! Hey-ya!
Mr. Geronimo!
Move! Take that!
Wouldn't you expect him to act more like a Native American instead of just an idiot in a costume? I mean, he's the only monster that acts like this.
Okay, maybe the developers thought it would be too politically incorrect. But then why even have him in the game at all?
And I know that he is a classic villain from the 5th episode. But on that note, where is the Ape Man and Miner 49er? They were in early episodes. Oh wait, is it because he's in the intro? Well, okay, I guess that makes sense. But it doesn't explain why he couldn't just make him a generic monster. Anyway, each monster reacts to you differently. For example, some just walk in a pattern, others can chase after you, and there are some that can cast spells. You can also get a disguise that can help you hide from the enemy, a feat that I perfected earlier in this episode. You can also use your disguise to sneak past the monsters, but this could leave you vulnerable to them. Well, most of them anyway.
What was I doing?
Okay, that zombie is either blind or really stupid.
However, once you get the crash helmet, you can just charge into them to defeat them, although some of them need to be hit twice. You can also pick up other weapons like the power jump ability, a special kind of bubblegum that allows you to bounce on the monsters, as well as bubbles that can trap enemies and turn them into platforms.
How am I going to get out of here?
Now that was funny. Throughout the game, you'll encounter obstacles that can't be surpassed without getting certain inventions. For example, in order to jump higher, you need to get the spring invention. And in order to get through spiderwebs and giant piles of boxes, you'll need the crash helmet that I mentioned earlier. There are also doors that can only be opened by collecting a certain amount of keys hidden around the area. But there are also other snack gates that won't let you through without collecting a certain amount of Scooby snacks. You also encounter these warp gates, which can teleport you to places you've already explored. It's a good way to help you collect any Scooby snacks you missed without actually having to walk all the way there. And even though this does involve a lot of backtracking, in the end you do feel like you're making progress. As you explore the property, you'll have multiple encounters with the groundskeeper, voiced by the late Don Knotts in his first and only video game appearance. He can help you out by giving you hints on where to go, as well as give you tools you can use in the game. And when you're not talking to him, he has some pretty funny idle dialogue.
So you might be wondering how I got over here so quickly. Well, never mind. I'm strange and spooky. Now move along.
There are also a few occasions where you'll meet Shaggy, but he only appears to help you solve a puzzle, like lifting a rock or help reach a high place. He can also give you a tractor ride through the garden.
This thing's out of control, pal. If you need me, I'll be back at the start. Wahoo!
Oh yeah, sure, go ahead and leave. I mean, it's not like I want to play as any other characters in this game.
Now, the biggest problem with this game is the camera controls. Or should I say, the lack of camera controls. I know I kinda made a big deal about the camera in Pac-Man World 2, but at least that game had camera controls. Now, I admit there are games that make lack of camera controls work, but in this game, it does not. Most of the time, the camera is fixed on you, and when you get to a certain place, the camera changes its angle. That wouldn't be so bad, but some of these angles don't really make any sense. And don't you just love it in platforming sections when the next platform appears off camera? And there are times when I don't know if there's a platform off camera, so I end up taking leaps of faith. God, was it really too much trouble to ask for some camera controls? Another problem with this game is the checkpoint system. Now, whenever Scooby dies, he starts back at the beginning of the area. This wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for the abundance of platforming sections and death traps. And when you fall off of a platform and into the abyss, you die no matter how much health you have. And it gets really frustrating when you have to do puzzles alongside the platforming, because then the puzzle resets, so you have to do the puzzles all over again. This is just brutal.
Oh no!
For me, the best thing about this game is the storyline. Before every boss fight, there's a cutscene that involves Scooby crossing paths with the game's main villain, the Mastermind, voiced by the awesome Tim Curry. I love the Mastermind, he's very entertaining, although that's to be expected with any Tim Curry performance.
That's right, and pretty soon you won't stand a ghost of a chance.
When you first cross paths with the Mastermind, he reveals that he was behind everything.
But why?
That is a mystery you will never solve.
In each cutscene, the Mastermind shows you a member of the Scooby gang that he has captured, along with a boss monster. And once you beat the boss, the cutscene gives you a few clues about the mystery, as well as some good jokes and moments that only Scooby-Doo can provide.
Like, let's get out of here, Scoob!
As for the bosses themselves, well, they're not quite like what you would expect.
Unlike most boss battles, these guys don't have a health meter. In fact, you don't even touch the boss. Much like in the cartoon series, you'll have to stop them in a creative way. Which, I admit, sounds like a pretty interesting concept. But I just don't think the execution was very successful. The fights are either too easy or too abstract. For example, the first boss is the Black Knight, which was from the first episode. All you have to do is hit the button whenever he's in the right position. And that's pretty much it. Too easy and also a bit uneventful. On the opposite side is the Green Ghost. And I still don't know exactly how I beat him. All I know is that you have to catch him in one of the 3 coffins. I don't know if you have to lure him over one or if he just goes in a pattern. It feels like I just got lucky, although to be fair, I'm probably just overthinking this. However, the third boss fight with Redbeard was probably the most successful, because it feels like this fight has a pretty clear strategy. He has a pretty clear pattern, but it's not so clear where it just becomes obvious. I mean, sure, it's not a really complex strategy, but at least it keeps you thinking.
Okay, now it's spoiler time. If you don't want any spoilers, then I would recommend you go to the time at the bottom of the video.
So after discovering all the clues and making it to Graham's secret lab, you find out that there weren't any monsters at all.
The professor was making super real holograms.
Like, wow! So that's where all the monsters have been coming from!
Yeah, despite the fact that we were able to get touched by them and jump on them, they are just nothing more than beings of light. Whatever, this is Scooby-Doo, I shouldn't be thinking too hard about this.
Now listen up, gang. I've got a plan. But Scooby's gonna need to keep the Mastermind distracted for it to work.
So after some Scooby snack bribery, we're ready for our final confrontation with the Mastermind.
Well, your luck ends here, as well as all 9 of your lives.
I think that's cats. Well, I'm not a cat.
Shut up!
Now this boss battle has 2 phases. Your goal in the first phase is to get the Mastermind away from the controls. And in order to do that, you'll have to hit these 2 buttons in order to rearrange the lenses. But you can only hit the buttons when there is no electricity going through them. And if that's not enough, the Mastermind also sends trolleys and space kooks after you. So you have to be sure to avoid them or get rid of them, because if you die from them, then you'll have to start this level from the very beginning. Anyway, after you get all the lenses in place, Phase 2 finally starts, with one of the most epic and most hilarious moments in the entire game.
That is both cheesy and awesome at the same time.
So now Phase 2 begins. And if you thought dodging all those trolleys was hard, let's add the Mastermind into the mix. And in case you're wondering, yes, if you die here, you start back at Phase 1. So judging from the first 3 boss battles, you have to defeat the Mastermind without making contact with him. Right? Warmed by so many Charlies, I found out through complete accident that, well, what's this? Damage? In a boss fight? Well, what do you know? Who would have thought that? After having 3 boss battles where that was not the case. So there are 2 actions you have to do to beat the Mastermind. First, you need to pound on him in order to stun him, and then you have to ram into him so that he hits the electricity. And now the Mastermind is defeated, but before we can unmask him, this happens. So now we're back at the foyer, ready to unmask the Mastermind. But right before you do, Shaggy suspects that it's the creepy groundskeeper, which leads to the groundskeeper entering the room and giving a hilarious rant about how everybody thinks it's the creepy groundskeeper.
Anytime some ghost scares somebody off a well-kept lawn, it's just got to be the groundskeeper.
So with that red herring out of the way, we finally unmask the Mastermind, who is revealed to be...
It's Professor Alexander Graham! Oh, me? Oh, my.
Of course, Velma doesn't buy it.
If you ask me, someone's playing a nasty trick. A trick of the light.
I knew it! I mean, come on, 70% of the time it's usually the guy who comes up with the legend.
So it turns out the Holly that was with us was just a hologram in order to keep us off her trail, while the real Holly dressed up as the Mastermind. Man, you know, those comments I made earlier in the review make much more sense now. And on a side note, I wrote that bit before I even beat the game. Talk about your crazy coincidences. Anyway, turns out she wanted to send her uncle to jail so that she can claim the rights to the hologram device and make a fortune.
Well, it was a good plan.
Yeah, and I would have gotten away with it too, if not for you meddling kids and your pesky dog.
The gang spent most of the game kidnapped. I mean, the dog did most of the work, and I should know because I was the dog.
And so the game ends pretty much like any other Scooby-Doo episode.
Hey! Scooby-Dooby-Doo!
Hey, here's an idea. Why not end the game with a good Scooby techno remix? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Scooby, what's happening? I don't know.
Okay, guys.
What do you know? Scooby's next. I got a plan. Ruby's next. Now it's time to get to the bottom of this mystery.
We're not afraid, right, Dad?
Anyway, this game is very decent, but it could have been a lot better.
It's obvious from the start that the programmers really cared about the source material and tried to make the game as close as they could to the original TV show. But the lack of camera controls and flawed checkpoint system hindered the full experience. On the opposite side, the immersive soundtrack, the great story, and all-star voice cast, sense of humor, and large amount of fan service do make this a great experience for every Scooby fan. There is a lot of room for improvement, however, but as it is now, it's more of a guilty pleasure game. However, I do recommend this game for any fans of those meddling kids and that dog.
I'm the Redshirt Reviewer, and thanks for watching. Now, where was I? Oh yeah.